Welcome to Creepy Crypt, where I share interesting content from the realm of the living. I'm Annie Calavera. Today I am going to share some creepy stories from around the web. So dim the lights, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Cops and other law enforcement people of Reddit, what were some cases you worked on that made you think, even if for a moment, that something supernatural/paranormal was going on? When I first joined the police, during our first 2 days of training school, we had a lecture from this old sweat, British police slang for an officer who has been in the force for a long time, who'd been in the job for about 20 years. He told us of his weirdest experience of policing. He said he'd been out on patrol in a car when they got an abandoned call to a house. He got there and it was a big house sort of isolated, and they knocked on the door and no one answered. He went to open the door and it was unlocked, and he walked in. The house was empty. No people, no furniture, no possessions. Completely vacant. He looked around and found no one there, but then looked upstairs and thought he saw someone move. He went upstairs. It was a really big house with a long hall upstairs. When he got up there, he saw someone go into the bedroom right at the end of the hall. He followed the person there, calling out as he went. Again, all the other rooms were completely empty of even furniture. When he got to the room he saw the person go in, he found it completely empty. No one was in it, and nothing was there apart from a big long mirror. He walked into the room and looked into the mirror. He told us he saw something in the mirror that he said has haunted him for the rest of his life. He wouldn't tell us what he saw, and said he'd tell no one ever, but that it terrified him. He turned around and left the room to leave. As he walked down the hallway he saw that all the rooms were now filled with furniture. No one was there still, but the house no longer looked abandoned. He said he left the house that day never knowing what had happened, or who had called police, but absolutely 100% sure of what he'd seen. He was completely serious, and it was obvious that he really believed that was what he'd seen, and it gave me chills down my spine when he was telling us. I've never forgotten it. It's probably too late for this to surface, but this is my dad's story. He went to a call where a father had gone crazy and decided to shoot his family. He killed his wife and was looking around trying to find his 5-year-old son to shoot him. The boy had run outside and was trying to hide on the side of the house behind the trash cans. The father eventually found him and point blank emptied nearly a full magazine at the boy. When my dad arrived, they found the boy in shock, hiding right where his dad found him, not a wound on his body. There were bullet holes in the side of the house all around the boy. When they finally got to question him about it, they asked him what happened when his dad found him on the side of the yard. The boy replied the angel was in front of me with a shield, and he saved me. He pushed the gun away from me. My dad used to work as a correctional officer at Goulburn Jail in Australia, which is probably one of the oldest and hardest prisons there. A story he tells of his time there is one I always remember. He said that the whole place was creepy anyway, not helped by some of the inmates at the time, including the notorious Ivan Milat, on which Wolf Creek is based. Anyway, first thing he noticed was that dogs would outright refuse to enter the prison. He said they couldn't get them past the gate no matter how hard they tried. But the creepiest occurrence was one night when they heard the sound of running booted footsteps. Everyone was in their cell so they couldn't figure out what was causing it. Next thing, all the doors of the open and unoccupied cells on the top floor were banged shut, one after the other with loud clangs. Then they see the source of the running noise. Now Dad swears this is what he and his colleague, so he has another witness, saw. Apparently they looked up and saw what looked like disembodied hobnail boots run down the aisle right over their heads, banging as they went. Dad decided to stop working in the prison not long after this. Super creepy. Cop here. Partner and I were dispatched to a welfare check. Elderly guy, nobody had seen him in a few days, mail overflowing in mailbox, missed a doctor's appointment, car hasn't moved, etc. We both know we are about to find a body. We arrive on scene and can't get anyone to the door, look through the window and sure enough, we can see his foot on the floor in the living room. My partner is a corporal and pulls rank and makes me go first. Door is unlocked, and as soon as we open it we smell a mostly fresh dead body. Almost relieved, we both enter and he tells me to check vitals on dead dude. He is obviously dead, with lividity, dried feces on him and dried saliva around his mouth. So I go to stand over him and see if I can get a pulse, at which point he takes a deep breath, rolls over, and asks why we are in his house. At this point we both start screaming oh shits and what the fucks as we both run out of the house. We called EMS and they transported him. Said they couldn't get a blood pressure or pulse on him. I think he died a week later in the hospital. I still get jokes about raising the dead. EMT here once had a call at our local mall. Show up and an 8-year-old was having breathing problems. Her mother, aunt and cousin had just been caught stealing and it was late at night. We assumed the breathing problem was stress-induced. Once we got into the back of our unit she looked my partner and myself in the eyes and said that she lived at a bad place. She said she lived with demons and I shit you not as she described the demons her heart rate plummeted to 90 BPM to 45 BPM in a matter of seconds. My partner and I looked at each other and immediately started trying to lighten the mood and preparing for a code. She ended up being okay. I will never forget that experience. I'm a CMA, was working night shift in an Alzheimer's unit. All of the residents were in and out with their lucidity. One lady seemed to be having hallucinations, which was pretty common for those residents. She insisted her husband was there and she talked to him, scooted over so he could sit next to her, etc., etc. Just generally acted like there was another person was there when there wasn't. Her husband, Jim, had been dead for a couple of years. She seemed happy, and there's no point arguing with someone with dementia anyway, so we left them to visit. After a while she quiets down and says Jim left. Across the hall the lady in that room turns on her call light. Her complaint? This man won't get out of my room. We don't see anything and ask what man? Who is it? She turns to the nothingness beside her bed and says, who are you? Then turns back to us and says his name is Jim. My dad used to work as a CO, corrections officer, at a rural prison. He drove perimeter, which just means he made circles around the jail in a truck, checking empty buildings for runaway inmates and just generally being bored for 8 hours every night. One night, my dad is parked on a hill just reading a magazine when he starts to feel a thumping in his body. He described it as the feeling you get when speakers are playing a song with really heavy bass and you can feel the bass in your whole body. Anyway, he puts the magazine down and checks his rear view and he sees someone outside the truck. He grabs his pistol and jumps out of the truck, weapon drawn. When he gets outside, he sees a procession of Native Americans walking through the truck and directly through his seat, only to disappear at the exact spot he was sitting. He said it was clear they were ghosts because many of them appeared injured. This went on for a few seconds, and then whole procession disappeared. He called the other perimeter guy on his walkie to try to explain, and the other guy almost immediately stopped communicating. Turns out the other guy had seen this happen before, but didn't believe in ghosts, so he wouldn't talk about it. Patrol officer here. This is not my story, but my partner's, and all 3 officers on scene verified this story too. So my partner responds to a priority breaking and entering call. A house sitter/dog sitter calls and says that he can hear loud banging and footsteps coming from downstairs, the ground floor, and he should be the only one home. The house sitter and the dog are both upstairs, dog is in a cage. So officers respond priority, including a K9 officer. Police release K9 into the house first to clear the house. K9 comes out empty-handed. 3 officers then go inside the house and clear it themselves. Again, nothing and nobody inside. Officers then step out front with the house sitter that called 911. As they're telling him the house is empty, they see the curtains of the bedroom window on the 2nd floor open. They're heavy curtains and they parted from the center, so they claim it couldn't really be possible from air vents kicking on or anything like that. And all 3 officers and the house sitter all see it. Then the guy asks police to come back inside with him because he's going to take the dog to a different home for the night and he needs to get the dog out of the cage. The police refuse to go back inside with him, not the best example of public service. My partner and I received a 911 call from an old woman having a dispute with someone. We get to the house and she says she alone. We say, "Who are you having a dispute with?" She says, "Oh, just this spirit in one of my rooms." Immediately me and partner look at each other and give the old "she's elderly, it's prod dementia" or something along those lines. As we're talking to her, she's explaining how sometimes a bad spirit comes around. She states that he's in the back room and, of course, the lights don't work. We try to tell her that spirits probably aren't in her house and we have to get to another 911 call. She insists we check it out. So we do. Now, the house, the way she was speaking about spirits, made me believe something was there. When we got the room and she opened the door, seeing a ghost wouldn't have shocked me. She did say that it's usually in the corner up on the ceiling. Well, that corner was dark and had the freakiest shadow that legitimately was terrifying. My partner and I shine our flashlights on the whole room and thankfully, nothing was there. We told the lady, "Nope, you're good, nothing going on here." I said to her, "If you feel there's a spirit there, the NYPD cannot help you. Go to a local church religious institution of your choosing and best of luck." We got the fuck out of there. Here's an odd one that I still have trouble believing today, and you physically had to be there to believe this. I was 19 and a volunteer EMT. We got a 911 dispatch call to a house that's been abandoned for well over 15 years. Police, fire, and EMS shows up. Police sweep the house and say it's clear. So EMS, myself and Captain go in. We go upstairs to the top floor of this farm out and it's extremely cold. The temperature outside had to be 80 Fahrenheit. Oddly enough, the window's wide open. So I slam it shut. This window took some effort being as old as it was to close, and looking out at the fire truck and ambulance in clear view in the driveway. He asked me what the noise was, so I told him I just shut the window that was open. We checked crawl spaces, closets, basement, which also had an eerie feeling of death in. There were shackles on the pillar. I guess it was for farm animals when being butchered? At least that's what a firefighter told us. We then proceed outside and my captain says, "I thought you closed that window?" Looking up at it. I said I did. Who opened it? So I go back inside expecting someone to still be in there and it was empty. So I simply closed the window once more, checked the window too to see if it's spring-loaded and maybe I didn't close it properly. Nope, typical sliding window. So shut once again, I went downstairs and back out. The window still shut. I looked up and saw a man in a plaid shirt put his hand to the window and once I focused, he was gone. But easily decipherable that it was a white male in late 50s with short black hair. So I thought nothing of it. It bothered me when I got bored and daydreamed. I began to do a little research on the property about who owns it and if anyone lived there. To my surprise, a friend of mine said his uncle lived there his whole life on the farm. He was the last one to pass away in the home. The uncle lived with his parents, which they passed years prior also in home. So I asked my friend if he was late 50s, short black hair and died upstairs. His face dropped and he said yes. He passed away from diabetes. He did not take his insulin and was found dead by his brother a few days later. After that, I look into that window every day driving by saying a prayer on my way to work. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting content. And I hope I don't see you for a very long time.